Hi everybody, my name is Kirsch and I'm a professor and staff attorney in the Women's Employment Rights Clinic. So thanks for coming. It's good to see you all. I feel like we never get to communicate with the night students. So I wanted to meet with you all and tell you a little bit about some on-campus clinical opportunities at GGU. Basically, I'm going to focus on there are lots of experiential learning opportunities at GGU, but I'm going to focus on the 3 on-campus clinics. So just first going to start with giving you an overview of what the type of work that the clinics do and then talk to you about specific requirements. We love to have night students, although we know that there are some logistical concerns, so I want to talk to you about those as well. So basically each of these 3 clinics functions as sort of an on-campus law firm where it's a hybrid between representing real clients and also a seminar and a classroom component. I don't know if any of you have had exposure to any of the clinics. Okay, so yeah, it's basically a hybrid where the professor in the clinic is your professor and also your supervising attorney. So all of our offices are right here on the 3rd floor, just across on the other side of the elevators. So for the Women's Employment Rights Clinic, we do individual representation with a focus on representing mostly low-wage immigrant women workers. So we do a variety of employment law matters. We do claims for unpaid wages, unemployment insurance, discrimination and sexual harassment, wrongful termination, so really a mix of different types of employment law cases. And we also do a lot of policy work and legislative advocacy. Most recently, we have been the legal counsel for the California Domestic Workers Coalition, and some of our students helped actually change the law in regards to overtime for those workers. Also recently this semester, and actually the past 2 years, my students have worked on a really exciting wage and hour case where we're representing 10 restaurant workers who work at Mission Beach Cafe in San Francisco's Mission District and helping them with a whole variety of wage and hour violations that they're dealing with. So that's sort of the type of work that we do. Oh, and I also want to back up and say that one thing I think to focus on is you don't have to necessarily be interested in the substantive area of the law to do a clinic. So you really want to think about it from the skills aspect that you're going to gain. So in all of our clinics, we focus on teaching client skills and litigation skills. So just to step back and keep that in mind as I'm talking through those things. So that's sort of the main work that we do in the Women's Employment Rights Clinic. Our students take the lead on the cases, they staff an intake line, and they get a lot of client work. The Environmental Law and Justice Clinic represents neighborhood groups and environmental organizations, and they focus on equitable treatment of disadvantaged communities that are disproportionately impacted by pollution. So mainly they work with low-income communities of color in the Bay Area who are impacted by pollution. And they appear a lot before regulatory agencies and in federal and state courts. Most recently, they've gotten a ton of media coverage because their students helped expose some fraudulent cleanup in the Hunters Point Bayview District. There's a massive fraud, and it's got a ton of media attention. And actually, I think the Navy contractor was creating fraudulent documents, and now they're going to be required to go back and actually clean up the site. So it's super exciting work. I know the students in this clinic really do a lot of heavy research and writing because that's sort of the nature of environmental law, and also a lot of litigation. And then we have the Veterans Legal Advocacy Center. And in this clinic, students focus on representing veterans in benefits-related matters. So students typically process and argue cases for disability benefits through the Department of Veterans Affairs or the Board of Appeals. I think that they do a lot of brief writing and they do a lot of appearances before the Veterans Board. Does anybody have questions for me on just the substance of the clinics? Okay, so that's just a brief overview. Oh, I forgot I made these slides, so I'll show you these too. So this is some of the work we do in the Women's Employment Rights Clinic and our typical clients. We do represent a lot of monolingual Spanish-speaking clients. Doug knows that. He's been helping me with interpretation in the clinic. And then Environmental Law and Justice Clinic, as I mentioned, is all environmental work and pollution. And finally, VLAC, Veterans Legal Advocacy Center. So just to give you an overview of sort of how you can participate in clinic or what it entails. So basically, students are eligible essentially right after they've completed their 1L courses. So I don't know for you all when that falls, but whenever you've completed your 1L courses and taken evidence, you can take clinic. However, you can take evidence at the same time. So a lot of my students take it concurrently, and that's no problem. And the reason for that is just that we actually get all of our students certified to appear in court, and that's one of the requirements. If for HLP students, they can take it as a placement, and you typically enroll for 4 to 5 units. So for all of the clinics, there is a seminar component that is 2 units, coupled with either 2 to 3 clinical units. And so you can decide about how many clinic units you want, but for your participation in clinic as a whole, you'll get 4 to 5 units. And then right now we are accepting the applications, and April 24th is the priority deadline, and then we accept them on a rolling basis until the clinics are full. So for WERC and the environmental clinic, we take up to 12 students a semester, and for VLAC we take, I think they take typically about 8. And I brought some of the applications up front. You can get them. They're also available online. And it's a pretty simple application. It's a 1-page, and we just ask for your resume and a statement of why you want to do clinic. So the requirements, and this is where I think it gets tricky for night students, so I want to talk a little bit about this, is the seminar component does meet twice a week, and it's during the day, and you have to be available to participate in the seminar. Now I know for WERC, we actually don't meet throughout the whole semester. We cancel a lot of classes towards the end. And so in the beginning, we might meet more regularly, and then towards the end, we'll have several weeks where we won't even have a seminar class. The seminar for WERC and ELJC is typically 3 to 4:20 on Monday and Wednesday, and I think it's going to be that way for the fall, and that's how it's always been, unless some other scheduling issue comes up. So you have the seminar component you have to meet, and then in addition to get your clinic units, you have to do between 12.5 to 15 hours per week. So that is typically where our students are in our office. So they come into clinic to do those hours, and they're available during that time to meet with clients. I meet with my students regularly throughout the week. We understand that for some of you all that's really challenging because you have jobs and you have other obligations. So for WERC, and I think this is true for the other clinics, we have some flexibility where you can do some of your work outside of business hours and without being physically present. But some work just cannot be done right outside of the office, like client meetings, court appearances, and things like that. So we have a guideline where we say that maybe 5, maybe 6 hours of your clinic time per week could be done outside of clinic. But the other time you actually need to come and be present during working hours. So some of my night students that have done this in the past have adjusted their work schedule for that semester to take like some half days or some full days off where they can come do the bulk of their clinic hours. The other thing that's somewhat challenging is it's nice if as a student you have some flexibility in your schedule because we can't predict court hearings and litigation deadlines, and so we do require that the student have some level of flexibility because we don't want you to miss all of the fun things like the client meetings and things like that. So it does take some coordination and some logistical planning, but it is possible. So you can't do clinic if you can't be available at all, Monday through Friday during working hours. Does anyone have questions on that piece?
I have 2 questions. First, the deadline that she says is for summer or for next fall?
No, I'm sorry, for fall. Yeah.
For fall.
So we don't take summer students. It's only fall and spring.
And how many hours they need to be in total in the clinic? Like you said, 12 to 15 hours. So I'm just thinking if one of us can be able to come and maybe do 20 hours. How do you count those hours, and what's the minimum to reach to 4 or 5 units?
That's a good question. I can't remember the exact minimum in my head, but we do have a total by the end of the semester that you need to complete. I think it's close to 200 hours. It works out. We take 14-week semester and times it by 15 hours a week or something like that. Once you meet those hours, sometimes my students are able to finish their semester slightly early. Does that make sense? So you usually spread your hours out over the week, but there are times where students work 20 hours a week because of the case, and then the next week maybe they work 10.
Okay.
Right, and so just to balance out and then meet those minimum requirements.
And how do you calculate it to be 4 units or 5 units?
Yeah, so you choose. As a student, you have the option to choose. If you do it for 4 units, you have to do 12.5 hours a week. If you take it for 5, you have to do 15.
Thanks.
And VLAC, I put up there, he runs, Professor Dan DuBois runs that clinic. He does it slightly differently, so it's 1 unit per every 45 hours you work. It's more akin to an externship, but he will work with you on that. So the breakdown is similar to the per week requirement. Yes?
What time does the seminar meet?
Yeah, so typically 3 to 4:20 on Monday and Wednesday. And then I want to talk about some of the benefits of doing an on-campus clinic. So it's sometimes confusing to students, why wouldn't I just go get an externship or do something off campus, which you can also definitely do, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. But one thing that's different, I think, about a clinic is that you get really close one-on-one supervision and mentoring by an experienced attorney. So our role is to be your professor and your supervising attorney. As you all probably know from your real work experience, you get all different types of supervisors. Some are committed to your professional development and some are not, right? And so typically in clinic, our goal is to help you and give you a really high level of supervision. We spend a lot of time one-on-one with our students, giving you line-by-line feedback on your writing. We sit in with you on client meetings. We give you feedback on how you counsel a client and things like that. So in that way, it's very different it can be very different from an off-campus experience. Also the fact that it's coupled with a seminar, so you're getting the substantive law. Also, the main point is to help you all develop litigation and client representation skills by working on real cases. So some of you may have legal experience already and you may be working as legal assistants and things like that, but our job is to really help, is to let you lead the case. So to treat you as a colleague and to take the lead on sort of strategizing, taking the next steps in a case, and really just being in charge of it rather than sort of just assisting your supervisor like you might do in a typical internship or externship where you might work on a small piece of a case. We really want you integrated into the whole case, so you will be responsible for everything that happens with that case. And also, as I mentioned, you don't necessarily need to be interested in a certain area of the law. The goal is to gain practical lawyering skills that are applicable to any legal field. So when you come out of clinic, our hopes is that you can say, I drafted a portion of this pleading, I interviewed X number of clients, I worked on this research project, not necessarily that I learned about sexual harassment and discrimination law, right? Maybe you'll say that, right, if you're applying for an employment law job, but it's to help you really become job ready and marketable when you graduate. And then finally, I think you all also have this experiential learning requirement. Maybe you can tell me if night students also have it. I think it's somewhere between 6 and 9 units that you actually have to fulfill before you graduate. And it's called experiential learning, which just means practical skills. A clinic will fulfill a good portion of those hours. Other ways you can fulfill them, I think, are through externships, and some of the simulation classes like trial advocacy might fulfill those. And then finally, you get to do really good work. So all of our clinics represent low-income clients, and we provide pro bono representation. So it's also a way to give back to the Bay Area community in all of these different fields. Any questions on any of that? Yeah.
Sorry, you mentioned pro bono. Does it count as a pro bono that we owe as well? I mean, I think every law student must feel like 25 hours or 52 hours. I remember the number when we enrolled.
It does only when you meet your hours requirement to get your units. If you work extra, that goes to pro bono. So you can't double count it, right? Because it's also for credit and then for pro bono work. And then just to briefly touch on, in addition to the clinics, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Then as far as the cases go,
Yeah.
how are those assigned? Do we have a say, or are they just kind of like just given to us, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it depends on our needs at the beginning of clinics. So we might sit down and look at what are the pending cases on the docket and what students come in with. We'll ask if there's a specific area of the law you're interested. Occasionally I get students who really want to do gender discrimination, right? So if I have a case, I might try to accommodate that. But sometimes we can't, and there is a sense of randomness to it. We look at the workload and look at how many students we might need on a certain case and divide it up that way. If we have someone with language ability and we have a client that needs that, we might divide it up that way. So our students jump on pending cases, and then also sometimes we just get brand new cases.
Mhm. And then a follow-up to that is, how many students are typically assigned to one case? Does that depend on the case?
That's a good question. I think it really depends on the clinic.
Mhm.
In work, you work with a partner. So we assign you a clinical partner typically. Occasionally we have an uneven number of students and someone might work alone, but typically we assign you with a partner. We don't let you pick, we just base it on your schedules. How much time do you have together that lines up? And then I typically give each partnership a couple cases, and those are theirs. I have had in the past bigger cases where I've had multiple client teams on them. I know ELJC just had this massive case, right? So I think they had like every student in clinic joined in to work on that. So one of the skills that we do focus on teaching is collaboration. So most of the things are done in a team if possible. Any other questions? And I did just want to touch on, I apologize, I'm not an expert on these, but there are a couple of other experiential learning opportunities at GGU I don't know if you're aware of. One is the pro bono tax clinic. It's slightly different. It's not a traditional clinic like the other ones I was talking about. And they actually do offer summer positions for law students. So the email to follow up, I looked at the GGU website and there's not very up-to-date information, but gradlaw@ggu.edu has more information. This is focused on tax administrative law, where I know students get a lot of experience working one-on-one with clients. And then of course there's externships, so I don't know, these are very specific, right? You need to get approval to get credit, and sometimes you can also get paid and get credit, but the placement has to be approved by Professor Teresa Walsib. And so her contact information is there. I know she works very individually with students to help them find the right externship and to see if it's going to be eligible for credits and things like that. That also does have a classroom component where they have a seminar that believes and teaches some of the common lawyering skills you might need across different programs. But that one definitely has to be approved. It can't be anything, and I think that it has to provide some level of supervision to the law students that are placed there. Can I answer any other questions about anything? Yeah.
So do you typically see 2L students kind of, after getting approved to join a clinic, planning their schedule around the Monday, Wednesday, and whatever clinic hours that they would do?
Kind of. They definitely have to plan around the seminar.
Right.
And then a lot of students have told me one thing they really like about clinic, granted they're here during the day, is that they actually do clinic around their classes. So they would come in between classes because it's just across the hall.
Right.
So they typically can build their hours around it. I mean, we advise students don't commit to a million other things the same semester you do clinic because it is a lot of work and it does require a lot of investment from the student.
And sorry, just a little.
Yeah.
If you apply by the priority deadline, when do you find out if you've been accepted?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, we've gotten some applications and we are going to wait and review them like almost immediately after that priority deadline and probably let students know within a week or two.
Okay. So you'll wait till 24th?
Yeah, collect them all and look
Okay.
at that. And if you don't make the 24th deadline and you want to apply, apply. Like we typically, people's schedules shift, people drop off, people aren't sure and they apply and then they withdraw their application. So definitely just apply and consider it. Yeah.
And is it also, like, let's say the worst case scenario, is there like a wait list if you are late?
Yeah, so
So
when the clinic fills up, we'll just take a wait list, and then every semester I'd say at least one student ends up having some sort of change, right? And then sometimes we can let people in. Yes.
Is there a certain GPA requirement for this?
No, we just want to see your resume and your interest level, and then we sort of assess from there. And we do encourage, as everyone in here is at a different year, but we do encourage students to do clinic early in their time at law school because I think it does help you get future internships and externships. It's something early to get on your resume if you don't have a lot of legal experience that can help you. Also, one other thing about your professors being your supervising attorney, we get to know our students super well and we get to know their work really well. So we typically, you know, can become really good references for our students if they do good work in clinic, and help them in the future with getting jobs and other opportunities. Yes?
So I apologize if you already answered this question, but I noticed that the tax clinic, you have to actually sign up as you're signing up for a class.
Yeah, I am the wrong person. So I was just saying this slide I don't know a lot about, but yes, I believe that's true. I think it's listed. It's a little bit different because it's also in the summer.
Yeah. But I just was wondering, do you have to also do a resume and a letter of intent for that? Because it didn't really say that on the...
I don't think so, but I'm
Okay.
not sure about the application process. It's slightly different.
And then, sorry, I have another question.
Yes.
That regards to that. Can you apply for more than one clinic?
You can, and we sometimes do have students, we want to know if you prefer what your top choice is, or if you don't have one, we want to know that as well, and then depending on if one clinic has a spot and one doesn't, right, that might dictate, but you can. And actually, I don't know why VLAC isn't on our application, but the Environmental Law and Justice Clinic and WERC, the application I brought up there, is actually combined, so it's just checking a box which one you want to apply to, and you can check both. Yes.
So if you did want to do both, would your, statement of intent just say like, maybe the first paragraph describing why you want to do work and then the next environmental, or?
You could do that, or you could just divide it up
Oh,
into two short statements.
right.
And I was going to say something. You cannot do 2 clinics in a semester, right? So we do have students do multiple clinics, one semester after another, or 1 year and then the next year. And we encourage that because they do actually do very different work and they can sharpen different skills, but you can't do 2 at once. It's too much of a commitment. Anything else?
Is there a limit to how many times you can participate in clinic?
We have some students who return and come back for a second semester and stay on a year, and we accommodate that if it's possible. And when that happens, the nice thing is you don't have to do the seminar again. You just get to do your clinic hours. So we do have repeat students.
And that's not true of other clinics. Like if you do a seminar like in WERC and then you decide to do environmental law,
You
still
got to take their seminar.
their seminar.
Yeah. Mhm.
Got it.
So if you all have any questions or want to come by, we are typically our office is normally only open during business hours, but sometimes we're here late. I put my email up here. Again, my name is Anna Kirsch. So you can email me, or you can always pop into our clinic office. Like I said, it's just across the hall, and we share a space with Environmental Law and Justice, and VLAC's right across the hall, so we're happy to answer any questions. And I hope that some of you all apply. And I will say that we, if you do apply, might want to meet with you one-on-one just before accepting you to make sure we could work out your schedule and just to make sure that you're also able to get the most out of the experience that you can. Okay.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.